Hi, everyone. I'm Candace Thorson, Managing Editor at GovLoop. If you're coming from the keynote lunch, I hope you got a chance to grab something to eat and to take a quick stretch so that you're ready for the great content this afternoon, including the session. So let's get to it. There's only one secretary of your agency. There's likely only one director, direct supervisor for you. But these people don't hold a monopoly on good ideas. Everyone, including you, is capable of innovative thoughts and constructive input. And the challenge is how to get the ideas out there. One way to do that is to increase your influence within the organization so that your colleagues and your bosses listen to you. Our expert today is going to tell us how to lead without having a title. I do have some housekeeping items to go over first. So if you're on Twitter, excuse me, excuse me, if you're on Twitter, we'd love to know what you learned. So use the hashtag NextGenGov to share your takeaways. We have great additional resources available for you on the console to download. That's on the right-hand side of your screen, and that includes the slide deck from this session. We hope you don't have any technical problems, but if you do, just hit the Q&A tab, and Andrew, my colleague, will help you out. You can also use that Q&A portal to ask our expert questions, and she's looking forward to them, so drop them in whenever you have them. We also have an open chat that's available for you. So don't be shy. You can use that to interact with other attendees, and that's on the top left of your screen. And if you missed some things and you want to go back and listen to some of what we talked about, don't worry, just check your inbox tomorrow because we're going to email you a link to the entire event. Lastly, we are giving 1 CPE credit for your participation today. So you need to do 3 things to get it. Stay and participate for the entire session, take all the polls, and then fill out afterwards the post-event CPE evaluation form. And you can find that in the resource module on the console here, or you can go back to the resource center that's in the main environment, and we'll email you directly your CPE once we confirm that you met all the requirements. So with all that housekeeping out of the way, I want to introduce you to our expert. Joining us today is Kiersten Patton Coxaruba. She is advisor for the Transformative Leadership in Disruptive Times program at George Washington University. So thank you so much for being here, Kiersten. And with that, I'll let you take things over.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Candace. Let me make sure I can move the slides. There we go. Perfect. Thank you all so much for being here today to discuss this really important topic. And like Candace mentioned, I would love for this session to be as interactive as possible. So please utilize the chat, submit questions. Let's hear some thought-provoking ideas for us all to consider and be able to really learn from one another. So to kick things off, I want to start with a quote. Let's see, there we go. There's my slide. Hello. By good old Simon Sinek. He is the author of a book called Start With Why. And if you haven't read this book, I would highly recommend grabbing it because it's very powerful. Simon says, a leader without a title is better than a title without the ability to lead. And I think that this reigns very true and relevant for this topic of discussion today. In the past, I've personally confused personal power with positional power, meaning we feel that we have to have the written authority or the authorization to actually lead people to a certain way of thinking or doing things. But now I believe that that's really not the case at all. Every single person here online on this earth has the potential to be a really amazing leader, regardless of your position or what your LinkedIn title may say. Even if you're not in government or in a corporate position, you could be a stay-at-home mom or a student in school or someone's brother, sister, grandma, grandpa, you name it. You're still a leader. And it's what you do in your life for the people in your life that can have a really big impact amongst those folks that you're looking to lead in the right direction for that mission, whatever it may be. But tying it back to the purposes of this presentation, leading up is so incredibly important because no organization is going to reach its full potential without that honest and upward communication and leadership from people. And I'm going to say it again because I think it's really important. No organization is going to reach its full potential without honest and upward communication and leadership from people throughout the entire organization, point blank, period. Because you know the solutions that your supervisors and managers don't even know exist. And I want to talk about how we do this. We do this by cultivating influence through our relationships with our colleagues and our higher ups. That's really a simplified version of how we lead. We're currently living in the age of the influencer. So if you are online or on social media, you know that there are certain people or accounts that you follow, not because you have to. No one is mandating you follow these people, but because you really like what this person has to say and offer. So much so that you may even spend money buying a product or a service that they promote. And that's because you believe that they are credible and authentic, and you trust them, and you may even admire them. So you are quite literally following them simply because they've had the ability to influence you. And when it comes to influence at work from a personal standpoint, right? Influence can offer you better relationships with the people that you interact with, can offer you a higher sense of satisfaction in your life, and overall less stress, which is crucial for our mental and our physical health. Now, professionally speaking, having influence, man, it can lead you to such great career opportunities. It'll allow you to actually enjoy what you do for a living and making better use of your time. Dare I say, maybe even getting some of your time back for yourself. So with that, I want to poll this group here today and ask, because I'm genuinely curious, what is it that you think would improve the most in your life if you were able to have more influence at work? And also in the chat, I want to ask, what effect do you feel like that would have on you? How do you feel like having more influence at work would be able to change your life? So go ahead and respond to the poll and submit some of those comments for yourself. Is it reducing stress, or having better relationships, or more opportunities for development, or getting more of our time back? What do we really care about? Awesome. Looking at the chat now. Elizabeth writes in, discernment is necessary to listen and understand before we buy into an idea that does not have a pure intention behind it, no matter who the person is that is coming up with the idea. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth. Yeah, awesome. Did we get those poll results up, or are they still pending?
Andrew is going to be pulling those up soon.
Okay.
I'm just going to give everybody a little bit more time to answer.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss it.
Yeah, just about 15 more seconds or so.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, please, everyone, send those comments in. I love reading them. Melanie says, reducing workload by knowing who to give tasks. Yeah, that's a huge problem within organizations, right? If nobody knows who's responsible for what, it can be really confusing. Catherine writes in, higher ups having confidence and trust in my decisions. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of things go to management, ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Less stress to improve the work produced. Definitely. Mm-hmm. All right. And we've got our results up. It looks like it's fairly even around the board, but coming in hot is more opportunities for development. Yeah, definitely. I think from a professional standpoint, that's what we all really care about. So let's talk about some things that we can do to really work on this. So I'm going to jump to my next slide. When it comes to influence and leading up, the first component to this that I want to touch on is around mindset. And I broke this down into 3 main ideas. So the mindset of a highly influential person within an organization stems from their daily habits, their attitude, and servant leadership. I think these are the big ones that really impact the mindset going into leadership. And I saw this quote online from Octavia Butler. She is an American science fiction author. She said, "Forget inspiration. Habit is more dependable. Habit will sustain you, whether you are inspired or not." And this really resonated with me because how many times have we told ourselves that we're going to start doing this one thing that we know it's going to be really good for us, and we know that it's really going to make a big difference in our lives, and it's going to be a game changer, but we're just going to wait until Monday to start, or we'll wait till the end of the week, or maybe the start of a fresh month. Oh, what the heck, let's just wait until next year, right? And the reason that we haven't done these things is because we're waiting to feel inspired, and we haven't made these habits yet. And the truth is, we're never going to start unless we commit to making it a habitual part of our everyday routine. Now, these habits that we want to form in order to get into the right mindset of a leader, they're going to look different for everyone. But I want to encourage you with just a few, and I challenge you to start implementing at least one right now for yourself, because this could be a game changer, right? And they could be really simple things like waking up 1 hour earlier, especially if you feel like you're rushed in the morning. But having that extra hour of time and taking some of it to maybe journal or meditate or pray in the morning, if that's your jam, before opening up these devices, right? Your phone and your laptop. Because the truth is, we are inundated these days with so much information and overstimulation and just gobbledygook that we don't have time to really center ourselves and start our day from a place of peace and gratitude. And it's very likely that you're going to bring the chaotic, overwhelmed, or even dreadful energy into work if that's not the kind of energy that you've been able to produce that morning. And that type of energy is not what you want to be seen as. You want to be seen as a positively influential person in the workplace. So in order to be effective and lead, we want to be seen as radiating high levels of positivity and prosperity, truly being the best versions of ourselves. This could look like getting in some movement in the morning, whether it be stretching or yoga or a jog around the block, getting all of that tension out of our body before a long day in front of the screen. I know many of us are doing that. But it's going to help set yourself up for success in that area. And this doesn't need to be anything hardcore or anything crazy like that. It just needs to be something to get your blood and energy flowing so that you are in the right state of mind. And just for fun, I want to know, poll number 2, do you feel like you have a really solid morning routine to center yourself throughout the day? And you can answer yes, no, or I wish, if that's something that you're hoping to work on.
I have
And
a morning routine, but I'm not sure it centers me. Like I wake up and I do certain things, and I open this window, and I have like a whole thing. And actually, and when my husband is home, it completely because I work from home, it completely throws me off. And I have to remind myself that he lives here too. He has every right to be here in the morning. But so I guess it does center me, even though it's not like anything that, I never thought about that.
Do you mind sharing it? And did you say it earlier?
Yeah, I wake up and I walk out my bedroom, and I I pass my office first, and I open the blinds there, and I have a lot of plants, and I talk to some of my plants, and then I make my way into the kitchen, and I open the blinds on the door, and I have a whole thing. So I make like a circuit around my house, and I do get screwed up if, I never thought about that.
Yeah,
But
I
it
love
has
that.
inspired me to journal, though, because I've been meaning to journal forever. It's been 20 years probably, but there's something very different about typing and actually writing it, like with a pen on really nice paper. it's a totally different process, I think. So yeah, now you've inspired me to start journaling again.
Good. I'm so happy to hear that. I love everything you shared from the plants. I mean, plants are magical in my opinion. They can really, brighten your mood. And then as far as journaling goes, I would just say, just set a timer for 5 minutes to start so it doesn't seem like such a daunting task. And then you can, build it up from there. So that's great.
It helps you sort through your thoughts that you didn't even know you had.
Exactly. Yep. That way you're going into your work day, feeling a little bit more zen, a little bit less chaotic. So
yeah.
Excellent. All right. And let's see, our group says 38% yes, that's good, but 41% are looking to work on it. All right. Well, I hope that I have been able to inspire you here too, and taking some ideas from Candace on how you can, really, really hone in on that morning routine. And for the folks in the chat, I'd love to hear from you too. Let's see if they've had any comments. But what's something that you do or have in the morning to really gear yourself up for the day and start things on the right foot? Love to hear what some of your non-negotiables are. I know for myself, I live in Florida, so it's spending time outside in the sun with my dog before I open my phone, and that's just a habit that I had to work on before it became a normal part of my routine. Oh, I love this. Okay, Amanda is sharing mini exercise sessions in the morning. Love a good sweat. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure I've ever said that. Just saying.
Marquetta writes in, she opens the blinds and curtains. Okay, like Candace was sharing, and says hello to the outside world. Yes. Someone else shared they take a long hot shower that serves as their meditation time, and drinks tea while listening.
Coffee, yep.
Or coffee, yep. Exactly. Like, these are all amazing rituals that are very important to start the day. And it doesn't need to be anything crazy. It doesn't need to be like a 2-hour morning routine. It just needs to be something to get you going, depending on how much time you have in the morning. So
it's interesting. Somebody said silence, but somebody else blares the radio, the stereo, and dances. It really just does depend on who you are.
Totally. Yeah. Everybody's, energy needs are different. So
drink coffee and play with my cat. That's me too.
Very relatable.
That's a very affectionate cat.
So all of that is to say, make it a habit to do what you need to do in order to prioritize your mental health, whether it be going for a walk, having good meals prepared for the week, or getting outside during the day and in between meetings. And I also want to encourage you to try implementing a new habit more specific to the workplace around simple gestures that you can do to really cultivate those relationships that you have with your colleagues and your managers. So I'm sure if you considered this, you could come up with a bunch of different examples of your own, but I'll just provide you with a couple. When was the last time that you sent a note to a colleague to thank them or genuinely compliment them on something that you saw them do, right? Now, the caveat to that is it needs to come from a genuine and sincere place, right? Like, you can't be just throwing out compliments left and right just to check a box. But the next time that you see something that stands out to you, bringing this to light is going to encourage your colleagues and make them feel closer to you, and therefore really strengthen that relationship with them. I also think checking in with your boss outside of your normal meeting hours just to say hi or share some good news instead of only ever going to them with problems is going to be a really great way to build that relationship and that rapport. Now, I know this may sound intimidating at first, especially if you don't have that type of relationship with him or her, but remember that your boss or your manager is a human too, and they don't want to only ever hear the bad news from you, because I believe it was Maya Angelou that said, people will forget about what you said and what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So keep that in mind. That's very true. Yeah. She's great. She's got a lot of great quotes out there.
I love her.
Me too. And on that same note of approaching your boss, or rather when you do approach him or her with problems, it's important to come prepared with possible solutions to those problems as well, even if they're not fully developed yet. But establishing a relationship with your boss outside of just work and getting on a more human level is really going to open them up to you and your ideas and their willingness to listen to you, and therefore create more influence in your relationship with them. So to that, I would also add, not getting out of the habit, getting into the habit of knocking out your most important tasks in the beginning part of your day. This is another great habit to implement. So that your best energy is going towards your most mission critical work. And then as your day unfolds and your attention has to redirect for one reason or another, you know that instead of procrastinating, you were able to achieve the thing that mattered most in your day already, which is going to set you up for success later on. As a side note, there's a really incredible book called The One Thing, and the author writes about this very concept and how important it is to block out distractions to achieve the one thing that by achieving it will make everything else easier or obsolete. So you may want to check that book out.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Now, I would love to hear from you in the chat. What are some things that you think you can work on and make it a habit of that is going to really help accelerate you in your career and ultimately make a huge difference in your ability to influence those in your organization? And this could be anything, certainly even something that we haven't mentioned yet, but I think for me, it's a little bit of the procrastination piece because we all love to save things for the last minute. I know I do. For fear of failure, honestly, is usually what procrastination boils down to. But in reality, the sooner you can accomplish your greatest task, the more time and mental bandwidth you have to become an excellent leader within your organization. So I'm going to check out the chat and see what some folks have to say. All right, let's see. Mary wants to be more mindful in the morning before getting online. Yes, totally agree. Teresa wants to develop a routine of following up with requests. Okay, yeah. Oh, that's good. I hadn't thought of that one, but I like it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, looks like Tripthy says, I've had to deal with a succession of hostile supervisors and second line managers. One tried to change me because she thought the only problem other people had was they were not just like her. I've experienced ageism, marginalism, and perhaps envy. Yeah, these are all really, really tough things to overcome. And, we'll get into it with the material, but a lot of it, it really boils down to communication and boundary setting, which we'll talk about later on. So thank you for sharing that piece with us. But LaTanya shares more relationship building and more meditating. Yeah, definitely. Did I miss anything?
I'm feeling better because I think all these apply to me too. So I need to meditate more. Somebody has meal planning and prepping. My husband would definitely agree with that one. So
yeah, and it takes like a little bit of time at first, but I think once you make it a process in your life, it just becomes easier. So it's kind of like being okay with putting in the work up front, knowing that it's going to make things easier as you go. So along with the habit piece is a big part of leading up is around attitude. And I mentioned earlier, acknowledging others for the work that they do. That's huge for building influence. You always want to make your peers and your boss look good as a way of leading up the chain of command. And I know that might be challenging at times, especially if, like someone mentioned before, hostile managers and supervisors, but we'll get into the extreme ownership piece. Just know that this truly is a critical part of becoming a great leader. Your leaders may not be great leaders, right? Just because they have the title, just because they're in the position, doesn't mean that they're awesome. But what is it that you can do to become a great leader and overcome, some of these obstacles and challenges that we face? So the most powerful leaders, they really do give all the credit and all the praise to their team, both publicly and privately. I would also say being unafraid to go first when others are scared to speak up, or
That's hard.
Yeah, it is. Definitely. Like, these leadership principles are simple, but they're not easy, right? Yeah. It's one of my favorite terms because it's so true about a lot of things in life. It's simple but not easy, along with asking the difficult questions when there's something that needs to be said and no one else is willing to open that door or open up that can of worms. Be that person. That's how you lead up, right? And also being willing to ask for help. When you know that you and or your team, doesn't mean that you're their manager or, you know, their supervisor, but you guys are on a team. If you want to lead up, you want to be a leader for them by looking out for your team. That's a sign of a true leader, is someone who's actually willing to put themselves in the uncomfortable situations for the sake of the team and ultimately the mission. And you don't need a title or permission to do any of these things. But it will make all the difference in the world with your relationships towards people and your situation at work. So I definitely wanted to highlight that. And to note too, like, these aren't actions that you can just take once or twice or every now and then when you feel like it and expect to have influence. It really goes back to that habit piece that we talked about before, because while you're making this a consistent in daily practice to start doing these things mentioned, over time is how you're viewed as someone who genuinely cares about the team, the organization, and the mission as a whole. And that's how you cultivate this power of influence at work. And again, notice it has nothing to do with a certain title. These are all things that can be implemented regardless of where you stand in an organization. So, moving on to servant leadership. All right. Ultimately, we lead up by serving up. I need to give credit to a man named Craig Groeschel for these next 5 ideas. He is an author. He's also a pastor and a leadership podcast host called Greg Groeschel Leadership. And if you're following along with pen and paper, you may want to jot some of these ideas down. But I learned from Craig that servant leadership breaks down to 5 areas that really matter the most. And these areas include honor, timing, motives, initiative, and truth. And I'm going to dive into each of these just a little bit here, but yeah, these are all the factors that encompass an attitude of servant leadership. So an attitude of servant leadership, honor matters. Honoring people publicly. Like I said before, praising and recognizing your team is huge, and it's what will ultimately result in being able to influence them later on and in private. The timing of servant leadership matters. So being able to pay attention and uncover the rhythm of the people that you serve. This means, one, it means truly valuing their time and being prepared when you approach them instead of just bombarding them with problems or problem dumping on them, but actually offering them solutions. And understanding the best time and means of approaching people about various different situations. So just as an example, you may not want to call your boss with a problem that you have at 5 p.m. on a Friday if it's something that can truly wait until Monday. Now, depending on the severity of the situation, of course, like, use your discretion, and you know your boss, so prioritize timing depending on what that situation is and how they would prefer to be approached. Now, if you don't know what that looks like, don't be afraid to ask and find out. Say, hey boss, how would you like me to approach you about these situations moving forward? Your motives matter. So motives need to come from a place of pushing the mission forward and not being purely selfish. So look within yourself and ask, are my motives for doing this thing genuine? Or do I need to reconsider my why, like Simon Sinek talks about in his book, Start With Why? Initiative matters. So if you are willing to go first, like we talked about, doing things that others won't do, like being willing to ask the hard questions, you'll have influence in the organization that others just simply won't. And then finally, the last one about truth. Truth matters. So don't be a yes person all of the time, but instead tell people the truth, even when it's hard, actually, especially if it's hard, because your leadership needs to know the truth in order to do their job effectively. And that's why, again, leading up is crucial to an organization's ability to reach its full potential. But of course, the caveat to this as well is do so from a loving and compassionate place, and make sure that, going back to timing, you are relaying the truth in appropriate settings, like scheduling one-on-one time with your boss, for instance. But if you've already taken the time to establish a relationship with your boss or colleagues, then telling the truth to him or her is going to be much easier and much more powerful, because you've already established a really great relationship with them. So they are much more likely to listen to you. So again, that's honor, timing, motives, initiative, and truth.
And I think people know when you're not being truthful. Some people are better at not being truthful than others, but eventually I think you get caught out.
Yeah, definitely. Truth always comes to light, right? You can't fake it.
Yep.
Yeah. So another poll question, out of the 5 factors that matter when leading up, the ones that we just talked about, which areas do you feel like you need to grow in the most? Is it honor, or timing, or your motives, your initiative, or your truth? Juanita says, amen, truth is huge. Yeah, I agree. And again, it's simple, but it's definitely not easy.
Do you think that it depends, like if you transition from one organization to another, like maybe you'd have more difficulty taking initiative just because of the team you're dealing with or your particular boss, but somewhere else timing might be an issue? So it's not necessarily, what's the word? It's not necessarily always the same for you. Maybe it's a little bit environment specific. Yeah. Is that fair to say?
I definitely think that's fair to say, because you have to, get your feet wet. You have to understand dynamics. You have to be kind of cognizant of who you're working with, and again, like how people want to be interacted with. So it would be a little bit, I don't know the right word. You don't want to just be like a bull in a china shop when you come into a new place or a new organization. But that should never stop you, I think, from still asking questions and being unafraid to, you don't need to necessarily like volunteer for things that you don't feel like you're ready to volunteer for. And I kind of will get into that when we discuss boundaries later. But if you're coming at it from like a genuine place of curiosity and wanting to do good and wanting to, again, like be a part of the greater mission, then that is always going to be a good thing. It's always going to help drive that influence up for you in the organization. And people are going to take note. They're going to be like, wow, like this person, they're new here and they're already kind of making waves in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So looks like a lot of people need to work on timing. Yeah. Timing can be really tricky. Initiative. Yep. And then truth. So I know for myself, like I definitely need to work on the truth telling in my own personal relationships with people. And it's not because I want to lie. I'm not a liar. It's it's easy to say what you know someone else wants to hear purely to save face and not let it be awkward. But you are doing a disservice to people by not sharing the reality or the truth of the situation from a loving and compassionate place. So that is something that I'm going to continue to work on this week. And I really want to encourage you all to hone in on the area that you chose for yourself and apply it starting this week. Make it a habit so that over time, you can begin to build up your confidence in all 5 areas of your servant leadership journey.
The truth is hard because I know years ago I had a boss who just wanted support for stuff that, you know, nobody else would agree with. So she'd say like, oh, don't you think whatever? And in the back of my mind, I was like, no way. But there was a right answer. And the right answer was, oh, yes, you're right. And so honestly, that's usually what I said. Or I said it very like sort of couched my no in a yes kind of way. But there wasn't an opportunity for truth. And it was hard.
And I think something that helps me when I get into a situation like that is I know, whether I've discussed this with my colleagues or not, I know that I'm not the only one that feels a certain way in a situation. Like 99% of the time, there's always going to be someone who also feels similar to you. So don't gaslight yourself. Like, you are not crazy. You are not wrong. Being truthful is hard, but it is necessary because that's how you grow as leader. And it's also how your leaders grow as leaders. So if they are, you know, really a true leader, they will be welcoming that feedback. Again, as long as you do it from a loving and compassionate place in an appropriate setting. Yeah. All right. So I've mentioned cultivating relationships as a means of acquiring influence quite a bit. And you may be wondering, okay, but what are some tangible things that I can do to actually improve this area of my life? So let's start by evaluating our willingness to be vulnerable with others. Brene Brown, if anybody knows who she is the queen of vulnerability. And if you don't know who she wrote the book, The Power of Vulnerability, and she gave a huge, widely known TED Talk on it. So highly recommend checking it out. But she says that vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's actually having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. Vulnerability is essentially the foundation for open, honest, and non-judgmental communication, which is crucial when it comes to our relationships at work. Being vulnerable doesn't have to mean discussing or disclosing all of your personal and private information or giving access of yourself to everyone on your team about everything that's going on in your life at all times. But what it does look like is letting people know, hey, I made a mistake, owning up to it. Or, hey guys, I'm going through a hard time right now and I may not be able to respond right away. So giving people a reason for your behavior without having to go deep into details, if that's something you're not interested in. It may also look like, you know, I would really appreciate some feedback on how you think I handled that situation. So really opening up to constructive criticism in order to learn and grow from situations and experiences. Or, hey, can we talk about some things in that meeting that went down if something doesn't fully sit right with you? So being vulnerable is owning up to and expressing to others what we genuinely think and feel, along with the act of vulnerability. Now, another means of cultivating relationships at work could really be as simple as scheduling a coffee chat with a colleague.
I love these, by the way.
Yeah, you do?
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, virtual or otherwise, depending on your geographic location. Candace, do you typically have them done over Zooms?
Yeah, GovLoop is all virtual. So every month we sort of mix up randomly like different groups of people, and we have a coffee chat for like half an hour. And then we have individual impromptu ones between people, like, hey, you just want to have a one-on-one for a little while. And sometimes it's just nice, it's like water cooler talk because we're not around a water cooler. And it's very cool. I had a boss years ago who said everybody needs water cooler time. You can't be expected to just work. You're a human being. You have to have some social time. And coffee chats are a great way to do that.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Taking time to engage and interact with the people that you work with outside of just your normal workplace conversations is a really great tool for cultivating relationships and in turn building influence. So I'm really happy to hear that you're doing that, and I hope others are as well. Plus, I will say when you do need to have those more vulnerable or difficult conversations with people, because they will arise, they'll be more open towards that interaction because you made the effort already to connect with them on a little bit deeper, more personal level outside of work-related scenarios. So in the chat, I want to know, let's get a conversation starting, get a conversation going. Is this something that you all online currently do? And are you making time to check in with your colleagues outside of work? And if so, please share with us what that looks like for you. Maybe it's a virtual coffee, or maybe it's something else that we haven't considered yet.
Sometimes it's helpful. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Candace.
No, I was just going to say that sometimes it's helpful because you know what's going on in somebody else's life. So if they're stressed out or you're sending, like, because it can be difficult when you're all virtual to get people's meanings when it's all written. You can kind of, you understand who they are better, so you can interpret them better. And, it just helps all around.
Yeah, definitely. I have people writing in that their organization dedicated every Friday for virtual coffee, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And Diana does virtual coffee chats with leadership. Catherine, you have a chat scheduled with someone from across the country and you don't work on the same topics. So I imagine this isn't someone who you've interacted with too much. So that's amazing. All right. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So did you experience with remote work through COVID, or I should say, did our experience with remote work through COVID help or hurt the ability to connect with folks that you work with? And please continue to share your thoughts in the chat, and I'll just share mine quickly. But I think for me, remote work caused me to crave more personal interaction. If anyone else can relate. So by setting up virtual coffee chats with my team around the country, just to get to know them a little bit better outside of work, I began to feel more connected to them in a way that I didn't prior to COVID. And yeah, again, if anyone online has done something like this before, or hasn't done something like this before, I really want to encourage you to reach out to someone on your team today and schedule some time with a colleague just to talk about life. It doesn't need to get too incredibly deep, but a great place to start is ask them about their family or their weekend plans or hobbies that excite them, because people love to talk about the things in their life that they're passionate about. And Dale Carnegie, the author of How to Win Friends and Influence People, coined the phrase, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So that is another tactic in
I like that.
Building influence.
You have great quotes. This is great.
I love quotes. I feel like they really help kind of paint a picture.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely take the time to learn more about your colleagues on a more personal level if you haven't done that already. See if anyone else in the chat wrote something that they do that's a little bit different. Oh,
People
Annie.
have morning check-ins. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, yeah.
Annie said it did both. I think it's in reference to COVID. you were required to make internal time to meet with them, but you also got to see, oh yeah, you got to see other people's, you know, kids, dogs, spouses in the background. And yeah, the face-to-face interaction is very powerful. Like, Candace, I think we were talking earlier in the prep for this, like, you know, I can still see you and that's awesome. It's more so than if we were just on the phone, but still you can't like tell if someone's about to say something the way that you can when you're sensing the energy in the room. So there's definitely a disconnect there.
Right. I don't know. But you know, it is interesting being able to see people's backgrounds, because it does give you a window into their personal lives. And I did something about how it blurs your personal life. Like if you're at work and you have a cubicle or something, you can put up the things that you want in there, like your college diploma or whatever it is. But when you're at work, when you're at home, you may not have that same kind of space. So people get to see like your dirty laundry and your messy living room and whatever you have. And it's weird. People get a window into your life you may not necessarily want them to have. So it's true. I mean, you know, I think so. I've been on video calls. I imagine a lot of people have, where you see a background and you're like, I can't imagine that, you know. So
I agree. And like everybody has a different level of comfort, like disclosing so like some of those folks, you know, maybe they're fine with the messy bookshelves or unmade bed in the background.
We all have bad spots in our house.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, there's different things that you can do to kind of overcome that as well. If it bothers you, as the person is like, you can do a blur screen in the back, you know, or just find like a little corner. But I do think it is fun to kind of see people's different personality flares, and it automatically drives more conversation. I mean, some like, was it Andrew mentioned, you know, the wallpaper in the back, and I told a little story about how it was our first time doing wallpaper and it was a mess. Don't do wallpaper, anybody. Just kidding. It looks really cool. But yeah, those are things that you maybe wouldn't have a conversation about were you to all just, you know, be in a facility. Yeah.
Right.
Great points. All right. Let's see. Rosemary jokes that her office is full of books is really a green screen. Yeah, definitely. I love it. And sometimes they're hard to tell. Like some people have really good backgrounds and I'm like, is that real? Or unless, you know, they move their head around a little too much, then I can tell it's fake.
Yeah.
But they got really good. Yeah. Ooh, a lunchtime walking group. Ooh, I love that. Okay, because that checks the boxes, right? You're getting outside, you're getting some movement, which is good for your mental and physical health, and you're connecting with people. So I think that's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
That is good.
Yeah. All right. So listening, practicing your listening skills to really cultivate your influence at work. In fact, scheduling a virtual coffee with your colleague or doing some sort of walking group, whatever it is also a really great way to get in practice listening. And this may sound obvious to some people, but the greatest leaders really do more listening than they do talking. And they learn more about their organization this way and are better able to uncover solutions to really drive the mission forward. So like I said at the beginning of this breakout session, you know the solutions to problems that your managers don't even know exist. And you're able to uncover these solutions quicker by prioritizing listening to people rather than just constantly sharing your own ideas or your own opinions. So I wanted to add that in there. And then for this next part of the discussion, I want to follow with the importance of establishing credibility for leading without a title. And one of my all-time favorite leadership books, if you haven't read this or heard of it before, actually, let me know in the chat if you've read this book or heard of it before. I am curious because I think it's kind of popular, but then sometimes I'll bring it up and people don't know what I'm talking about. So let me know. But basically, the concept of extreme ownership is that you need to own everything that goes on in your world and just accept that there's no one else to blame. I mean, could you imagine for a second, let's do an exercise, just close your eyes, okay? If every single person you knew, including yourself, definitely yourself, took on a mentality or attitude of extreme ownership instead of finding excuses or people to blame when things go wrong, how different and amazing would that be, right? Adopting an extreme ownership mentality is going to give you credibility and a heightened amount of influence, regardless of your title, because you are going to become known as the person that people can count on to make things right and not play the blame game. Nobody likes the victim mentality, but extreme ownership, let me just preface this too, doesn't mean just absolutely taking on everything no matter what, right? Like extreme ownership also means being responsible for communicating your boundaries, and not just for yourself, but also abiding by them for others, like the folks on your team, for example. So, oh, someone said, I love Jocko. Yeah, me too. He has a great podcast also. You probably already know that, Pamela. But for anybody else listening, great podcast. So let's see. Part of extreme ownership means communicating your boundaries. So establishing personal boundaries really reflects the way that you take responsibility for your life, and also defines how you're going to be treated and how you're going to react. Well-defined boundaries allow you to show up assertively and authentically and act from a place of courage and honesty, which are all qualities of highly influential people. So for this example, it could look like, just making these scenarios up, I need to do some deep work between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So I'm not going to be available to make this meeting this morning. And making it clear that you need some space to be excellent in your role. Another example could be, could you please start sending me these requests earlier in the day, because 5 p.m. is my cutoff because I need to be with my kids, or whatever the situation is. It makes sense that you have roles and duties and obligations outside of your job, but we need to communicate these things. It could also look like, I have a specific time throughout the day where I check my email. Otherwise, I won't be able to focus on my most important tasks. So taking extreme ownership by setting yourself up to avoid distractions and be able to stay in a flow state. Ultimately, this boils down to clearly defining what needs to change for you in order to be successful, and being unafraid to communicate that information clearly. The people that you work with or work for are not mind readers, right? They probably have zero idea that what they are doing by sending you requests at 4:45 as you're trying to wrap up your day, or sending you G chats every 5 minutes, distracting you, is taking away from your ability to do your job to the best of your ability. So don't shy away from setting boundaries and being open and honest and transparent about what you need in order to be more successful in your role. People will respect and appreciate you more than if you just let everyone bulldoze over you and your needs all of the time. And with that, I want to, let's see. Sorry, I lost control of my clicker for a second. Okay. With that, I also want to follow up around the importance of keeping your commitments as a means of establishing credibility and ultimately leading without a title. So keeping your commitments, right? It goes back to consistency and being the kind of person that people can count on. It also ties into boundaries, because you don't want to be that person that just says yes to everything and overcommits themselves, and then you can't execute or execute well on the task at hand. Who's been there before? Because I know that I've been guilty of it in the past. This comes back to that truth telling we were talking about before, and not just saying yes because you want to people please everyone all the time. That's impossible and, quite frankly, unproductive. So, in order to establish credibility and really have influence at your organization, it is vital to always honor your commitments and do what you said you're going to do in the time frame that you promised. Now, that being said, life happens sometimes. And circling back to vulnerability, if something comes up and a commitment is going to be impossible for you to achieve, be honest and express this as soon as you see this unfolding. But don't make it a habit to wait until the last second to say anything or not honor your commitments and not communicate why. And I'll say it again, but if you've taken the time to establish relationships with your colleagues and managers, these conversations will be much easier to have, and you'll feel much more supported during those times of need and struggle. So before I, excuse me, in here, I do want to open it up to audience questions, or I would love to hear from you on any key takeaways that you gained from this workshop. Is there anything specific that stood out to you today, or something that you're excited to implement moving forward? I would really love to hear from everyone.
I have a question. A couple of people talked about just now about boundaries. Some people think that boundaries are made to be broken, and colleagues don't give a jot about boundaries. So what happens if you actually try to set boundaries and nobody cares? Like, how do you reset your boundaries, I guess?
Yeah, I think, upholding those boundaries and looking at it like, is this a non-negotiable for me? And, understand too, like, why the people that you're working with are not committing to those boundaries as well, because they might have their own reasons, whether they're valid or not. But taking the time to, speak with this person and going back to the why. I think you have to always explain and hammer home the importance of why it is that you're doing this thing or setting this boundary in this particular example, because you have your reasons. It's not just because you want to make life harder for everybody else. It's because whatever your situation is. And so being able to articulate to those people, like, nobody wants dictates. They just want to, I think ultimately, like, if you can explain why this is helpful for you and why it's so important, then people are going to be a lot more receptive to what that is. And then they're probably going to have their reasons, and just it goes into having more dialogue. So then at that point, if you can better understand each other and each other's perspectives, maybe you have to come up with a new plan for whatever that boundary is that you're want to have in place. I know it's a little vague because I don't know the exact situation, but
sure, it varies.
Yeah, but I think, communicating that with the other person, if someone is just really vile and really hostile, like, that's a little different situation altogether. But I would say for the most part, if you are able to have these conversations and explain the why and have them, understand why it is so important for the mission, kind of goes back to your motive too. Like, is your motive coming from a place to further the mission, or are you being selfish? I don't know. That's a question for you to answer. But I think that just looking into those concepts is going to help you form those relationships and better be able to uphold those boundaries.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kiersten. I really appreciate this. I'm just looking at the clock, and unfortunately we're out of time. But you inspired me to do a lot of things. I am going to start journal writing. I am going to try and, because habits are a problem of mine, so I am going to try and be, hold true to the habits I've said I was going to do for the last 10 years, and a bunch of other stuff. So I just want to thank you so much for doing this. I do also want to thank our Next Gen Partner Alliance for helping put on today's summit. I do have a few reminders. Don't forget to fill out your CPE evaluation forms so you can get your credit. You can do that on the console here, or like I said, go back to the exhibit hall. go back to the main page, and you can do that there. We also have an exhibit hall with lots of great information. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, then please do so. And our closing keynotes are at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. There are 2 sessions, Unconventional Paths, Gov Leaders Share Their Journeys, and the last one is Find the Passion for What You Do. So I hope to see you there. I just want to thank you all so much for being here. And again, thanks, Kiersten. Have a great day.
Bye. Thanks, Candace.
Bye-bye.